Hello, everyone. Hello, YouTubers. It's Anonymous T. Hope you're having an amazing day today. So today we have more fallout, you guys, from the late Kevin Samuels, because there is drama between the alleged friends, between the YouTube friends on YouTube that didn't show up to the funeral, and then the family, you guys. Because apparently now, in order for you to be considered a relative, you have to be named in the obituary. You have to be named in the funeral program to be considered family, apparently. Genealogy doesn't matter. Your birth certificate doesn't matter. Your DNA doesn't matter. But your name has to be in the funeral program, you guys, for you to be considered family. Make it make sense to me, you guys. Make it make sense. So, what am I talking about? So, allegedly, there is a first cousin who, is saying his account of things and saying some things that are not going to make Kevin Samuels' YouTube friends look good, you guys. So, as a result, some people contacted the late Kevin Samuels' best friend, and the best friend is basically saying, hey, I don't know them. I've never heard of this person, this and that. And people are like, hey, it's the person's son that is their names in the program of the late Kevin Samuels' aunt and uncle. That's the name of his parents. But this whole thing where you have to be in the funeral program to be considered family is cap. This whole thing where if you're somebody's best friend, that you need to know everybody's family inside and out. Let's take a poll, you guys. How many of your best friends do you know all of their family, their extended relatives, their cousins, their aunties, both sets of their grandparents, their great-grandparents if they're still living? How many of you guys know your best friend's family, every single family member inside and out? Because I can only tell you that the only extended family that I know of my best friends were the ones that I saw when I attended, her wedding. But outside of that, I'm not interacting with her extended relatives and everything else on a regular basis. We know each other's parents, obviously, and we know each other's siblings, obviously. But this whole thing where, we're running down your aunties, your uncles, and your cousins. And the irony of this coming from somebody who wasn't even at the funeral, you guys. Somebody who didn't even go to the funeral now has the authority to say who was and who wasn't a relative of Kevin Samuels. And I find it funny that you have the smoke for this guy, but you were mute on the black woman who known Kevin Samuels since the 1980s, you guys, and called out the clout chasing and called out using the family for clicks and views and using your platform to stream and make the tune of 30 grand, you guys, in 2 weeks off of Kevin Samuels' name and still didn't bother to attend the funeral. And feels that though, because a name, whether or not a name is in a funeral program, makes you relevant, makes you considered important, you guys. Make it make sense. But this is where we are now. This is where we are, where everything is semantics, where everybody is trying to pick at certain things to push a certain narrative. But all it tells me is all of the gaslighting and all of this back and forth and all of this trying to prove this or that and trying to disprove this and that is that somebody is scared. There are people in these YouTube streets that are scared. They're scared. They're tired of being exposed. And they think by, the one or two people that they know, if this person says that they've never heard of this relative, that means that relative doesn't exist. That means that relative, is fake. They're capping. But this same relative made it a point to attend the funeral and you didn't. So how does that work? And then you're trying to say that there was a supposed guest list. Well, here's the thing. if there was this alleged guest list for a funeral, you guys, make it make sense. Because it wasn't a private funeral, right? It wasn't invite only, because the people who allegedly were invited didn't even show up. So make that make sense, you guys. But literally, as the one YouTuber showed, you attend the funeral and they had you like sign in or whatever, and then they had the ushers escort you to a pew seat to sit in. So this wasn't this thing where, oh, there's this imaginary list that you have to be on to attend this funeral. And now you're trying to say, now the funeral is fake. Now the funeral is invalid because there were people that you don't know that were there. But see, this is what happens when people are in your life for a short period of time and don't know all of the ins and outs of your personal life, you guys. Even some of your best friends do not know your deepest and darkest secrets and may not know the extent of all of your relatives and anything personal that is going on with your family. Not everybody just discloses that to people. But again, to push a certain narrative to say who's the better friend of Kevin Samuels, who's the legit relative of Kevin Samuels, are the only people allowed to say anything. And the reason why more people keep coming out, the reason why more people keep going to these other YouTubers to speak is because lies are being told. False narratives are being put out there. The lady who knew Kevin Samuels since the 1980s said the night before the funeral service that the family was pissed at these people claiming to be Kevin Samuels' friends, claiming to be his ride or dies, that are exploiting off of his name, that are making $30,000 in 2 weeks off of his name, but then bullying other people that dare say anything about the late Kevin Samuels. And what's crazy is we're not even discussing Kevin Samuels anymore. We're not discussing, what he did or didn't do, whether you liked or disliked his content, whether or not you liked or disliked his approach, and when he talked to Black women on his platform. We're not even discussing that. We're discussing these alleged high-value friends doing some high-value backtracking and picking at little things to grasp at to try to invalidate anybody that dares say anything that they don't agree with. But you could have met this alleged cousin had you attended the funeral. That's what's so crazy. And there's receipts galore of this cousin at the funeral, you guys. I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of members in my family, you guys. I don't know about you guys. I have a lot of relatives. And I have so many relatives that the relatives that have passed on since I was little in the program, our names are not always in there. It gets to the point where it says, because there's so many relatives, you guys, that I have, depending on who the relative is, unless you are immediate family, 9 times out of 10, your name's not going to be in there. And literally, after they list all of the names, they'll literally say after that, if there were any sisters or brothers-in-laws, or if there were any nieces and nephews, if there were any additional cousins that were not mentioned previously, if there were any additional family or friends, there's a whole blurb at the end of each obituary that says that. But maybe that's just my family, you guys. Maybe that is just my family that does that because we have a lot of relatives, you guys. So we don't, literally, if we listed every single relative in the funeral program to be considered a relative, the funeral program would be basically a book, you guys. It would literally be a book. So it's just funny to me now that you are only important if your name is in a funeral program. And the irony of that, because you're basically shading other YouTube alleged friends of Kevin Samuels who did not attend the funeral that were not in the program. And you're also shading the 2 YouTubers that were Kevin Samuels friends that still attended the funeral, but they're not in the program, you guys. But apparently your name has to be on a funeral program in order for you to be considered important. And only in order for you to be considered a relative or a friend or somebody legit, you guys. Make it make sense. Make it make sense, you guys. Because that is blasphemy. That is completely and utterly blasphemy. And you know what makes it worse is that some of those names that were on there didn't even show up to the funeral. So how are you the authority of what can go on at said funeral, and you couldn't even show up yourself and your name's in the program? I personally would be offended. Unless there was some emergency or some conflict to where you absolutely could not physically get to Oklahoma City to that funeral, there's no excuse, especially if your name's in the program. No excuse if your name's in the program for said funeral. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. It's not acceptable, and it tells me who your real friends are. Who really cares about you when it matters the most? But to sit here and invalidate a relative because you've never heard of their name and the alleged best friend has never heard the name, that means they're not real, even though their names are right there in front of your face. Literally, the parents' names are right there in front of your face, and there's receipts of said person at the funeral. Meanwhile, you were not at the funeral. You were on YouTube bullying other content creators. But this is what happens, you guys, when people are scared. When people are scared, they start to nitpick at any little thing that they think they can go viral for, that they think that they can spin a narrative to make themselves look good. Oh, your name's not in the funeral program, so therefore your opinion doesn't matter. I've never heard of your name before, so therefore you're not a real relative. You don't exist. And it's just funny. These same people who are claiming to be friends of Kevin Samuels are doing more harm than good by literally trying to invalidate Kevin Samuels' family. Make it make sense, you guys. How can you tell a relative of Kevin Samuels that you have not personally ever known or interacted with that they're not real, even though their parents' names is sitting right there on the program? But see, this is what happens when people, all they have to say is, I know Kevin Samuels, I was a friend of Kevin Samuels, and all of a sudden your subscribers shoot up, your money shoots up, you make 30 grand in 2 weeks off of his name, and you don't show up to the funeral? But that's all people have to do. Literally any of us. People can flip the script, you guys. They may have only met Kevin Samuels one time, you guys. They've maybe only had one conversation with Kevin Samuels, and all they have to say on their platform is, oh yeah, I know Kevin Samuels. And you guys are going to run to that channel, and their subscribers are going to shoot up because you think that there is some sort of an attachment, that there is some sort of closeness, that they have been relevant all these years. Meanwhile, the actual people in contact with the actual family, the people who have known Kevin Samuels for 30 and 40 years, who do not have the same amount of subscribers, that are telling you guys what's really going on. What's telling you guys that the family is not happy with what is happening with Kevin Samuels' alleged friends on YouTube. That they're not happy that certain people, even after the other YouTube friends have distanced themselves and have stopped, the slander and the defamation and everything else of other people, who have stepped away and completely pivoted their content towards other things, that there still seems to be people who still want to push a certain narrative, who still want to capitalize, who still want to exploit things. And that is why people like myself and others are here, you guys, because we need to debunk the lies. Because this is no longer about Kevin Samuels and who he was and what you think of his legacy, whether you liked him or not or anything. This is all a big, whose bleep is bigger contest. That's what this has turned into. Whose bleep is bigger contest, so that they can try to say that they're more important than you, that they can get the clout and they can get the attention and not you, that they're only allowed to say things about Kevin Samuels, not you, because your name's not in the program. But even if your name is in the program, apparently it's okay for you not to show up to the funeral and still, come for their family. Still come for your friend's family that you said you're trying to protect their legacy, but you're literally insulting your friend by saying said relative doesn't exist, all because the best friend said he's never heard of the person. That doesn't mean the person doesn't exist. Like, it is just wild to me. Everybody is raised differently in this world, you guys. Everybody has different relationships with their family, with their friends. You don't know the ins and outs of these relationships. You don't know the intricacies. Not everybody is entitled to tell their friends every single nook and cranny detail about their lives. Heck, there's people in your own family that don't even know everything there is to know about you. So how about that? But to sit here and, disparage somebody whose parents is literally right there above yours, by the way, in the program, to say that they're not real, to say that they're not legit because the best friend's never heard of them, doesn't mean that they're not real, doesn't mean they don't exist. How many of you see all of your relatives on a regular basis? How many of you outside of your immediate family see your relatives on a regular basis, see your cousins on a regular basis, see, all of these extended family, your second, third, and fourth cousins on a regular basis, you guys? Unless they live in the same city and town as you, it is highly unlikely, you guys. But that doesn't mean that they're not your family. And this is what I mean, you guys. This is why we have to continue to keep having these conversations about the late Kevin Samuels, because it's the people who are claiming to love him, it's the people who are claiming to be his best friend, and the people who are claiming to know him inside and out that are doing more harm than good, that are actually damaging this man's name. All because you don't know the name of one of his relatives. And you don't like what said relative has to say on what their thoughts of their late relative that just had an untimely passing, that they're not allowed to have an opinion, they're not allowed to have any suspicions, that they're not allowed to be pissed at people claiming to be Kevin Samuels' friends who are clout chasing. And that's what this is really about, you guys. They want the alleged relatives that do not agree with their philosophy, that do not agree with the narrative that they are pushing on YouTube, they want them silenced. So a way to silence them is to say, hey, since I know Kevin's best friend, since I know such and such person, affiliated with Kevin Samuels, and they said they never heard of this person. So it's lies, people are desperate to get clicks and views on their channel and blah, 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 blah. No. Just because somebody hasn't heard of their name doesn't mean that they're not real. Just because somebody's name is not on a funeral program doesn't mean that they're not a relative, you guys. How many of you guys have been on every single funeral program of a relative or a friend or a coworker or a colleague that you attended their funeral and your name was on every single program? I want to see a show of hands. Because I am telling you on a first-hand account, I have too many relatives for there ever to be a situation to where every single person's name outside of the immediate family is going on that funeral program. It's not happening, you guys. It's not. So it's just so wild, you guys. It's so wild because the same people who do not want to keep having these conversations, the same people who are tired of people using Kevin Samuels' name for clout and attention are pulling the same shenanigans, are again continuing to push the hatred, continuing to invalidate other people, continuing to crap on Kevin Samuels' relatives. That's the new push now. That if you're a relative that they've never heard of, you're not real. Your name's not on the funeral program, you're not real. You don't exist. Make it make sense, you guys. Make it make sense. But this is what happens when people start to get scared. When the threats do not work, when the exposés do not work, and now you have to only refer to people that you know that definitely know Kevin Samuels to try to invalidate other people who literally are saying that they're their family. How can you make that determination? And you're not even in Oklahoma City. You didn't even attend the funeral. So you don't even know who truly was there and who wasn't. And now because you don't know the person, now it's a conspiracy. Now it's a conspiracy. I'm telling you, you guys, the people you think are your friends, the people you think that care about you, and then they pull stunts like these, they pull publicity stunts like these, tells you everything you need to know about the person. Tells you everything you need to know. So there is that. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified the moment I post new content on my channel. And with that being said, I'll talk to you guys again very soon.